Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Dr. Jane's DC, coming to you live from our nation's capital on the Exceptional Conservative Network. I'm Jane Ruby, and I'm glad to see everyone tonight. I know it's been a difficult week so far for many, many people, small businesses, working folks, companies, our citizenry in general. So my heart goes out to everyone. I want you to hang in there. We're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. Got some great guests for you tonight. We have Sandra Lee, who's a writer, speaker, author. We're going to talk to her about a very special book that she wrote about President Trump and get her take on, of course, what's going on in our nation right now and how it's affecting people. And then I'm really excited to also bring on a favorite of mine and many viewers of our show, Curtis Ellis from America First Priorities, America First Policies. We'll be talking to Curtis. He's a great guest, and he's got his finger on the pulse of things that are going on. So, look, guys, you've seen me on Twitter, you've seen me on Facebook and other social media, Instagram, and I've been ringing the bell loud and clear that we are taking down our nation economically for something that has less than a 1% death rate. I have my opinions. Others have theirs. I still trust the president. I'm grateful to God that he is the person leading this charge for us. But I also want to say that I think we're seeing a little bit of positive news. I know the stock market tanked again today, went down. I think when it closed, it was around 18,400, something like that. I do think this is sort of turning the curve. I've heard some very good things. My basic rant, of course, that I talked about last week on the show was that I truly believe this was an economic bioweapon or a bioweapon to attack our economy. It's the only thing that the left has left to attack President Trump. I believe it's a collusion. The Chinese government, not the people, but the Chinese government, the left, the communists, the Muslims, and the media, of course. The media have enhanced this hysteria, and they've moved this extension of the coup along. That's my opinion. So I don't think they're going to be successful at it. We have to remember we're a country of tough, strong people. Many of you who are legal immigrants and or descendants, like the greater majority of the rest of us, know what this country is built on, and we are going to come back bigger and stronger than ever before, because our economy didn't go down because it was weak or because companies made bad decisions or there was tremendous corruption. The economy tanked because of an artificial impact in terms of an economy. So it's very real to the people that are suffering, have lost jobs. I have family members who own small businesses. I'm living with the pain day by day. But as some of them have told me, they took the harsher road, and it broke their hearts to really lay off everybody that they could, because that might result in a shorter time that they'll be laid off, like maybe a couple of weeks, instead of do it in dribbles where people would basically lose their jobs for many, many months. So there was number crunching, and these small businesses live month to month, so it's very tricky terrain for them. Okay, so I wanted to share with you censorship alert. It's becoming a weekly issue. This time it happened to me today again, and I want to show you how ridiculous this is. Hold the phone. I'm going to show you a picture. Here is the notice I got from Twitter today. We've temporarily limited some of your account features. Some of my account features, they basically suspended me. The only thing I can do is DM, and I can't even send a photo like this picture to my followers and great supporters on the direct message. I can only write to them. But look at what they're suspending me for. Look a little closer. Violating our rules against posting misleading information about voting. Voting? My tweet says, be careful out there. Many people are now out of work and may be desperate. Even though this is temporary, it could bring out increased criminal activity. I'm getting reports of scammers, fake census takers, and thieves. How is that related to voting? B, who the hell are they? So, look, I had to remove this tweet, which is no big deal in my estimation, to get the clock going on a 12-hour suspension. So I'm down to about 6 hours. By the time, I go to sleep tonight and wake up in the morning, it'll be over. But it just goes to show you either the algorithms in Twitter or the people themselves are just out of control. It's really bad. Okay, before I bring my first guest on, and by the way, any of you who are watching the show, I see a bunch of you in on, even though Twitter and Periscope are owned by the same group, they still let you Periscope, thank God. So if anybody is here, if you could tweet out, share the Periscope with people on social media, on both Facebook and Twitter, I'd really appreciate it. Otherwise, folks might not know that it's on. So if you could retweet this, because I can't. For those just coming in, I was suspended today for 12 hours from Twitter. So I wanted to share with you, what's hot in D.C. It's Dr. Jane's D.C., after all. That's the title of the show. I just came to start the show, and I was still watching the president's presser, which started a little after 6. And he can't say that he doesn't spend time, answering all of the questions of the press, the fake news media press. So what did I learn today? And I want you to know this because I think there's some positive signals coming. Obviously, a lot of you probably saw his tweet from yesterday on Sunday, where he said the cure cannot be worse than the actual issue that we're trying to solve. And so he's going to be making a decision at the end of the 15-day period. And for those of you who are unaware of where we are in day 8 of the 15 days. Okay, so this is what we learned. First of all, he started calling it the virus. So somebody got in his ear in the West Wing and said, tone it down, and he did a little bit. And I think he's calling it the virus instead of the Chinese virus because he also called for please be careful and not blame people of Chinese descent in the United States. Okay, I got to take the word of my president. Although I do think a lot of people who are here, like, Chinese nationals and Chinese students, I think a lot of them are spies, and I think they steal our intellectual property. But that has nothing to do with the virus. Or maybe it does. I don't know. You decide. Here are the key things that he shared, that he signaled to us and said. He reinforced a return to business faster than the 3 to 4 months that, quote, others have been saying. He introduced the idea, which was very exciting to me, of location-specific, careful resumption back to work. So he said things like, certain areas of the country are not affected. So why should they be shut down? So they're going to be looking at reopening from a geolocation perspective, and getting up and running rather than an across the board, because we don't want to have the virus flare up again. He said that numerous antivirals, not just the 1 or 2 we've been talking about, are close to coming out. And really, that's the fastest way to hit this thing. Vaccine won't be ready for a year or 2. New drugs that have not already been approved and that are out on the market and deemed to have a reasonable safety factor by the FDA are going to take a year or 2. You just can't rush past clinical trials. You have to establish it in stages, safety, your efficacy and your safety. And that's what Dr. Birx was talking about in the presser. Okay, and then he said something about a DMV deadline. I've got to look up that one. He also reported that Americans have been repatriated from Brazil with their cooperation, mostly seniors, but they'll be sequestered and taken care of. And then Dr. Birx said that there is the 99% of the mortality out of the European Union, out of the EU, are over 50 years old. And she reinforced herself that things will likely change at day 15 if everyone just continues with the precautions. Okay. So anyway, just wanted you to know what was said in the presser. I think it was positive. I think we're beginning to see the early signals that this thing has an end. And I know President Trump is very concerned about business. So let's see. Let me just give me a second here, guys. I'm going to bring in our next guest, Sandra Lee. Give me 1 second because we had a little bit of a technical glitch, as we always do. This is live TV, as we say. And I'm going to bring her in. Give me 1 second. Hold on, guys. Okay, everyone. Sorry, we had to switch to phone because we were having a little bit of technical challenge tonight, but I want to introduce my first guest. We're really excited to have her. She studied acting at the Actors Institute in New York City. She's created, produced, and hosted over 400 television programs, which is amazing, and which aired to audiences of over 1 million viewers. Sandra Lee is a teacher, a writer, an actor, public speaker, so many more things, and author of the fabulous book, Dear Donald, Letters from a Loving Deplorable. Sandra, welcome to the show tonight.
Well, thank you. It was a lovely introduction. Am I speaking to Dr. Jane Ruby?
You are indeed. Well, you are on Dr. Jane's DC.
I've been looking forward to that.
Well, it's fun to have you on. I know everybody's going through a lot right now in the country, and I think you have a lot of fun and positive things to talk about. So I wanted to ask you what you think of everything we're going through right now. What's your take on this whole pandemic situation?
I am absolutely heartbroken. I am heartbroken. I want to say I'm heartbroken 1,000 times. This is so unexpected. It's so vicious. It's so sad. It's so dangerous in so many ways. And I can only say that I've been nervous and upset and disturbed for days and days and days. But with all of that negativity, my positive point of view is that I adore Donald Trump. I have absolute faith in him. I see that he's handling something that is staggering, unexpected, overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
China wants the world to believe that this virus came from American soldiers. We know that's not true. And Donald Trump is in this terrible position of having to deal with the economy, the disease, the fear, the entire world responding to this coronavirus. Can you even imagine what this man is going through? And on top of it, he is calm, cool, collected. He looks terrific. He's up past the night. I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he does it.
Yeah, he has great stamina. And I think, Sandra, that, I think the majority of the country shares your sentiments, your feelings. You said something really interesting a moment ago. You said, you were very disturbed by many aspects of this thing and its impact, but the viciousness. Are you suggesting, or do you think that this was an intended consequence by China against President Trump and our economy?
Wouldn't that be the most awful, awful thing? I'm praying that that is not the case. Here I am, a book author, a teacher, that conservative suburban woman, they want to vote for Donald Trump. What do I know? I have never been involved in politics. You know, I'm a bright woman. I'm an educated woman. I'm the daughter of an immigrant. I'm the American dream. My father went from nothing to big success. I've never been so engrossed in an election, in a presidential run, in politics, in everything going on in the country. I've never been this involved. There's something about this man. He's so engaging, that he's so captivating, he's so interesting, and I'm absolutely captivated by him. Do I think China did this on purpose? Oh my goodness, what a question. What an incredible question.
What do you think?
And I can't tell you that I haven't asked myself that question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm afraid to answer that question. Do I think they did it on purpose? I don't know if they did it on purpose, but I think they're using it against us. I think a lot of people are using it against us. You know, this man has stood up to the world.
Mm-hmm.
He stood up to the world, not only China, but every other country in the world who has taken incredible advantage of us. He stood up to the Democrats and the Republicans. He stood up to corrupt government. He stood up to the fact that great fortunes are being made by many in government, in Congress, in leadership positions, who are taking advantage of the American people and are not doing what's best for the American people. So do I think that this is a plot? To some degree, I think it's a plot in a million different directions.
Mm-hmm.
To some degree, I think it's a real virus. It's not the first time China has a virus like this. They have those terrible markets. It's something that needs to be corrected in their culture. And they're not owning up to their part of the problem, which I'm very saddened by. And Trump, of course, is trying to maintain peaceful relationships with everybody, with Iran, with China, with North Korea, with everybody, you know. And I think the man is utterly brilliant. This week, I was a little scared. I really was. I thought, oh my, what are you doing to this economy? We can't continue with this. And I thought, well, maybe I'm being callous. Maybe I don't care enough about the people who are sick. That's not true. I care deeply. But you have to weigh and measure the cost of this shutdown. And in my opinion, listen, I'm just an American citizen. I'm not an expert. But I'm not stupid. And in my opinion, this has to stop, and it has to stop soon. You have to get people back to work. Because putting all these people out of work is going to cost much more in terms of physical, mental, financial, emotional, spiritual stress than this virus ever would or ever could.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, and I think he's there. I think he's definitely there, as signaled by, I don't know if you caught the presser that just ended moments ago, but let's
Yes, I listened to it. He's there too, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not crazy.
Yeah, no, you're spot on.
With the way I'm thinking.
Yep, you sure are. We have a few minutes left. I do want to talk to you about your book that has a really fun title. The book is called Dear Donald, Letters from a Loving Deplorable. Tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write it and what it's about, really.
Well, it's about me and it's about Donald. You would think he was my best friend in the whole world. I write him letters every day, and I don't really know him personally. But I lived in New York for most of my adult life, and I know a lot about New York and a lot about what he does. I've invested in real estate. I'm a very comfortable woman financially. I'm very independent. And I thank him for that. You know, I read his book. I must have read his book a million times, a lot of his books.
Yep.
But, you know, I definitely learned a lot about investing in real estate from him, and it's been very lucrative for me. I'm very enchanted with his presence as president. I think he's fascinating and charming, and I have become interested in politics only in the last 5 years, and I started writing these letters to him. I don't know, it was sort of crazy.
Did you mail them?
I did. I mailed the book to him, but mostly I was sending these letters to my friends. And I wrote so many of them, the next thing I knew, I had a book. And it was really about my life and about his life. You know, I sort of relate to him. He's inspired, I say in my book, he's inspired something remarkable in me. He seems ageless and tireless as he moves forward. And when I feel old and tired, you know, I'm sure you can relate to this. Every woman wants to be young and beautiful forever. And I was young and beautiful. You know, I'm feeling my age. And I see this man not aging, not getting tired. I watch him and I shake off all those negative feelings. And I embrace what's young and strong in me. And I juxtapose my life experience to his. And I just find treasures. You know, he's had a lot of imperfections. And so have I. I had a very, very colorful background. I became a born-again Christian maybe 30 years ago. And so, you know, I've evolved. I'm a lovely human being today. I don't know that I was so lovely 30 years ago. And I'm sure that he could say the same. I watch him evolve, and I watch him not persecute himself for his past. I watch him forgive himself for his sins, embrace that forgiveness, and his energy and his light aren't dimmed by regret or remorse. He's born again moment by moment, and he receives this blessing of renewal. And I watch him and wonder, and I learn. It's such an inspiration to me. And I think he's doing a great job. The economy is great. Now, we'll get it back, but we can't continue keeping people out of work. This has to stop, and it has to stop quickly.
Yep.
And all these letters I sent to you, now I'm writing book 2.
What is book 2 going to be about? What are you doing in book 2?
Dear Donald, 4 more years, more letters from my loving deplorable. I'm the loving
That's
deplorable,
great.
you know? And yeah, I totally think he will win. I know he's going to win. I absolutely know he's going to win. But I don't doubt that on some level there's engineering going on to bring him down. Because you know what he's doing? He's calling out all the demons, all the devils, all the evildoers. He is. He's standing up to them. And boy, are they panicking. So he has a lot of evil to confront. But if anybody can do it, he can, and I'm really rooting for him.
He sure can. Well, Sandra, we're gonna close in a moment here. I want to thank you again for being on Dr. Jane's DC. Where can people find the book, Dear Donald?
They can find it at Amazon, and I hope they will find it and read it. It was such a pleasure, Dr. Jane, being on your show.
Thank you.
Have me again.
Well, we'll be talking to you again, I'm sure. It's been great to have you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Good night.
Well, that was kind of fun. Just a little lightheartedness, you know, someone who wrote a book, you know, based on letters that she wrote to herself and to Donald Trump about how he's inspired her life. And I think we're all pretty, in a good way, affected by that. You know, it's been a lot going on. And I'll tell you, I shudder to think of anyone else at the helm right now leading us other than President Trump. It's just, we are just so lucky. Things are crazy. Before we go to a quick break, and then on the other side of the break, we're going to have Curtis Ellis come in and talk to us. I'm really looking forward to talking to him because we were just together at CPAC. And for those of you who caught our live broadcasting from the Exceptional Conservative show and network, broadcasting live from CPAC, we did both Thursday and Friday evenings from 6 to 9. We snagged Curtis. We actually had him scheduled, but he sat down with me, and we had a lot of fun, and we had no idea what was to come. So I'm really looking forward to catching up with him on all of that. So let me just see. There was something else I wanted to finish up on this presser today, just before we go to the break. I was saying that because they're seeing such low mortality rates with the virus, and because Dr. Burke said that 99%, that's almost 100%, 99% is a lot, out of all the deaths in Europe are age over 50. Now, that doesn't make you feel better because we don't want anybody to die over 50 or even over 80. We have loved ones and we care about people. But the point is that it's not something that's just taking down, you know, the citizenry randomly. This is something that, as a lot of diseases are, and is the normal, I say the seasonal flu, don't call it normal, just like the seasonal flus, it does hit harder those that are older, less, physical reserve, those with chronic medical conditions, especially respiratory and cardiac conditions. I always think of what I learned in my medical training was I always think of the heart and the lungs as one organ system. And somebody said something on the Periscope I want to address. I didn't get the name, but said something like, now our enemies know how to attack us. That's an interesting thought. I wanted to come back to your comment on that because you could look at it that way, and maybe they think that. But I'd like to think that one of the things, because President Trump keeps emphasizing, along with some of the other people on the task force, that they've learned a lot from this thing, and that different systems are in place, and that the CDC system was really only designed to handle the seasonal flu and maybe other types of outbreaks, and not even that well. Wasn't even that good of a system because it hadn't been challenged. Sometimes when things are challenged, when your system's challenged, your country's challenged, you become innovative again and you redesign and retool so that it's better than ever before. And don't think that President Trump hasn't thought about this attack. I think Sandra was being very kind and generous. I think it was a bioweapon used for an economic and political attack. Don't think that President Trump hasn't thought about that, isn't aware of it, probably knows much more than I do about it. And don't think he isn't putting major changes in place to address that and to protect us from that. Well, guys, let's go to a little bit of a brief break, and we'll come back on the other side. Don't go away. We have Curtis Ellis coming up at 8:35-ish, and that's going to be a fun interview. So just hang tight with me.
This is Dr. Jane Ruby in Washington, D.C., author of A Sea of New Media. I wanted to tell you a little bit about this book because I was inspired to write it by Andrew Breitbart, who actually vindicated the Tea Party after they were falsely accused of calling 3 African-American congressional leaders the N-word, and nobody could come up with a video or an audio. So he told them weeks later, and on the National Mall, to hold up their cell phones, and thousands of people held up their cell phones, and you could see this beautiful in the night, and he said, there you have a sea of new media to capture the lies. Folks, we can't trust our mainstream media. We cannot trust our press.
When you report fake news, which CNN does a lot, you are the enemy of the people.
When President Trump says they're the enemy of the people, he's not being a dictator. He's telling the truth. They won't tell us the truth. But if we all have our cameras out in public, they can't lie if thousands of us are showing a video of something happening or not happening. So I encourage you to pick up a copy of the book. It's called A Sea of New Media. And if you think you can't make a difference, think about the guy who caught Hillary Clinton on tape. The average citizen caught Hillary Clinton being dragged into the van at the 9/11 memorial in 2016. We never would have known she was ill if it wasn't for that single individual citizen. Pick up a copy of A Sea of New Media on Amazon, and if you happen to see me around DC, I'll be happy to sign the book for you and give you a big hug. I'm on Facebook and Twitter, and I have a show in DC called Dr. Jane's DC, Tuesday and Thursday nights on the Exceptional Conservative Network. Please join me again. I'm Dr. Jane Ruby. See you next time.
Welcome back to Dr. Jane's DC, guys. Great to have you with us tonight. We talked to Sandra D., who's an author, writer, and public speaker. She's also might be doing some news stuff, I think, for the Exceptional Conservative Network soon. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that interview. Thanks for staying with me tonight. I just want to give everybody some hope and some encouragement that we are going to get through this thing. I think we're already seeing a little bit of the turn around the corner as we heard President Trump in the presser this evening. Actually, that went into the evening till almost my show time. I had to leave at 5 to 8 and start the show. But he keeps reiterating that this is going to be very limited, very short, that he's going to make a decision on the day 15 of the day 15, and we are in day 8, as I understand it. So I think we're coming upon some hope. There'll be a little bit of relief financially and some stimulus to people, workers, and the companies that are employing them. I have a family member who had laid off basically everybody today. It was not a pleasant thing to do, but when he crunched the numbers, he realized that if he laid off everybody at once, that they could probably come back in 2 or 3 weeks, rather than lay off people in small chunks and then have them not be able to come back for many, many months. So every business makes their own decision. That's not a recipe for anybody else. But what I did really appreciate hearing in President Trump's press session this evening, he had Dr. Birx with him. He had Bill Barr, who's I'm not a fan of because he hasn't indicted Hillary and company yet, but that's another topic. Right now we have other fish to fry. He had Bill Barr on to say that the Justice Department is taking action against price gougers and hoarders and things like that. So, there's always greed and some criminal activity that come out of these emergency situations. So that was good. It was a great presser, and I really think he signaled some positive change coming very, very soon. And we'll talk to Curtis Ellis about it. I see he's in the green room now, so let me bring him in tonight. Everybody, let me introduce my next guest. I'm always thrilled to have him. Former Trump administration official in the Labor Department and senior policy advisor on the presidential transition team and the 2016 Trump-Pence campaign. Curtis Ellis is currently policy director for America First Policies. Curtis, great to see you tonight.
Hey, it's great to be here. Always nice to talk with you, Jane.
Oh my gosh, it's just so much fun. You know, I was just saying to the audience a few minutes ago, we were just at CPAC, kind of yucking it up, having a little bit of fun, not really any big signal that something like this was coming. What are your thoughts? Let's just jump in.
Yeah, that was something. We were at CPAC, and later we discovered that there was somebody at CPAC who had tested positive for the coronavirus. And actually, I discovered that person was in the hospital. As we all learned, Senator Cruz went into self-quarantine, though he never did test positive. So, and then this thing spun up from there. It is gone to 0 to 60 in 2 seconds, it seems like. And now I'm sitting in New York City right now. We are locked down. I can go out. I can go to the park on the corner. I can go to the grocery store. I can get takeout from a restaurant, but and I discovered yesterday I can go to the hardware store. That's still open. The streets are very, very empty. It looks like a ghost town.
Boy, it doesn't take much to take even the strongest of economies down a bunch of notches, does it?
No, it doesn't. And there's a cost to that. I have been writing about this for years, and in the Department of Labor, we're very aware of this, that there is a cost to unemployment. We see domestic violence rates increase. We see alcoholism. We see suicide. We see opioid addiction. And let's not forget, very real problem this country faces, the opioid epidemic. It rages strongest in those parts of the country where unemployment is highest. the outsourcing of all of our jobs and industries to China in the industrial Midwest, in places like Portsmouth, Ohio, and across Michigan and New Hampshire. Those are the areas where the opioid epidemic is highest. So that gives you a very stark example of the cost that comes from economic depression. You get psychological depression and you get physical mortality rates increasing.
You know, we were talking about the very issue about made in America versus made in China when we had you on the show, the live show at CPAC. You know, I know you have your finger on the pulse, you know, like few others in terms of the, you know, what the president's thinking, what the direction of the policy. Before we get to him per se, a lot of people in social media, a lot of really, you know, interesting, connected people are concerned that this was a bioweapon used as a political and economic attack on President Trump and us, the American people. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, you know, the question that you're asking or that they're posing is, was it done intentionally or opportunistically, right? And I was talking with a general about this, a retired Air Force general, about this very subject. In a way, it's kind of the wrong question, and I say that as somebody who asked that same question. It's not important whether they did this intentionally or saw the opportunity. The effect is the same. These are the things we do know. We know the Chinese were hurt very much by President Trump and have been hurt very much by President Trump. His tariffs, his wake-up call to the world. The world and the United States and the elites now think very differently about the Beijing regime than they did before President Trump came on the scene. Joe Biden still feels the same, but you know, there's some people that are out of touch and there's no hope for them. But the people who are with it get it, that China is a threat, that they are out to destroy our country. We also know that the media is susceptible to hysteria. They too don't want to see President Trump around. The Chinese have been doing everything they can to get these tariffs rolled back and have been using forces within our own country to do that. They use the Wall Street people. They use the National Association of Retailers, which should actually be called the National Association of Importers and Outsourcers. And they use these various interest groups to lobby for their policies, which is remove the tariffs, continue outsourcing to China, continue dependency on China. So when this virus came along, they saw an opportunity to, and I'm not saying they did it on purpose. I'm not saying they released this virus on purpose. But when this outbreak happened, they saw an opportunity that, well, and they've written about this, and I've written about it too, but looking at the documents from within China, from within officials, high-ranking and reputable officials inside the state industrial complex of China, they say that the rest of the, as the rest of the world goes into an economic slowdown because of the virus, our factories will be open and we'll be able to flood the world with goods and expand our power and counter the anti-globalization forces. We will be able to push back on those people who call for decoupling from China because the rest of the world will be more dependent than ever on China's factories because their factories will be shut down. And that's scary. So the danger to the United States is not just a public health danger, but it's an economic danger and a danger of the Chinese military, industrial, economic complex to really further subvert our independence, subvert our sovereignty, subvert us as an economically independent nation. And remember, the Chinese don't just want to be providing cheap goods to the world. They want to get rid of our values. They don't believe in individual liberty. They don't believe in God. They don't believe in freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and all that. And the American way of life would be kaput if they succeed in their goal.
Yeah, opposite ends. To that point, and to the notion that if it was opportunistic, I've also been talking to a lot of financial experts and advisors this week, and they're telling me, because they can read the market and I'm not a finance geek. My wheelhouse is in other places, but they're telling me that the Chinese are furthering this sort of opportunity to attack us by flooding our market with dollars and shorting lots of stock, and that they're going to leave us with more problems than we know. What are your thoughts and understanding about that part of the threat?
Well, like you, Jane, I'm not a finance geek either. I would not be, it would not surprise, look, the Chinese need dollars. The Chinese Communist Party, the Chinese regime thrives on dollars. See, that's why I don't put anything past them. They know that their contest with President Trump is a fight for their very survival. And their fight with this virus, this pandemic, is a fight for their very survival, because this microbe has done more to expose the fallacy, the dangers of globalization as it's been pursued. Trump, for the last 4 years since he's been president and campaigning, he's saying, we've got to bring manufacturing back to the United States. We can't make everything in China. China has captured our industries and our jobs, and it's been bad for us. Globalization has been great for China, not so much for the United States. He put the tariffs in place. But the virus has shown everybody it's a huge wake-up call. 90% of our medicines made in China. When you hear about the doctors who don't have face masks and protective gear, it's because it's all made in China, and China will not let the American factories in China that are making these face masks export them. So the Chinese regime gets it that after this is over, all those factories are going to leave, and it's going to starve the Chinese Communist Party of money, of dollars. So I totally expected they probably shorted the market, so they can make as much money now. They probably put short bets on everything, on Boeing, on Disney, on Carnival Cruise Lines, on all the stuff, Marriott, everything they would expect to be destroyed by global lockdown, by travel lockdown. And then they've got their willing accomplices, unwitting accomplices in the media who hate Trump, just parroting their line, their propaganda line, saying, we've got to lock it down and keep it locked down for 8 months. It's like, oh, great.
Right.
And it all serves their end. Now, I'm not saying that I just want to be clear on this. I'm not saying they built this virus in a laboratory and they released it with this whole plan in mind. Maybe, some pangolin or civet cat or, Rocky Raccoon in the market, sneezed on somebody and the whole thing broke out that way. And then it got out of hand when the officials tried to cover it up. And by the time they woke up and said, well, we can't cover it up, it was too late. But when that happened, they say, well, we got a lemon. How do we make lemonade? How do we make the most out of this? Because people are going to wake up now. And Wilbur Ross said right off the bat, Secretary of Commerce Ross said, at the end of this, there could be a silver lining. People could see the dangers of having all of our supply chains, our manufacturing in China, and bring them back to the United States. And that's when Xi's disease, President Xi said, we got to do something about this and try to push back against this.
That's a fascinating point, that the world has now, China's exposed to the world. And it's not just the United States, which is probably their biggest customer, but a lot of other countries are going to say, whoa, I don't want to ever be dependent on them again, those 25-cent widgets, But there's another side to this I want to get your thoughts on. When you read things like, The Art of War and Sun Tzu and, all these other, strategies, if somebody's backed into a corner for their very survival, they can become a super warrior. And I worry that if China's very survival, they will get that. They do have a value. They value that. What else will they? Maybe will they do intentionally? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's the thing. Is this is a very dangerous time, because, as you say, they're like a cornered rat. They are fighting for their very survival. The stakes could not be higher. That's why I don't put anything past them. And they would say, so what if a few million people die? This is the regime Mao Zedong, killed 60 million people in his reign. The Communist Party has no compunction about purging. And if they think, well, let's do a purge on a global scale, we'll do it. Now, also, they've been fighting this propaganda war. They've been putting out this propaganda that the United States started the virus, that the United States introduced the virus to China. And they've been telling people that inside China, in Chinese, and unless you, as well as their ambassadors, actually saying it on Twitter, and Twitter will close down your account or my account if I talk the wrong way about transgender bathrooms.
Tell me about it.
You can have a Communist Party official spreading lies, the official of a hostile foreign power spreading lies on Twitter, and they're allowed to do it. Something's got to change there, but I digress. So they're saying that they're spreading deliberate lies, disinformation, to hide their own responsibility for this global epidemic, which has killed thousands of people, and they're preparing their own people inside China for a war. And I would not put, because it's so, look, you go back and you read Livy's History of Ancient Rome, and ever since BC, since time immemorial, you rally. If your regime is in trouble, you start a war, because then people rally around the flag and they unite. We saw this in the Roman Republic when the proletarians were rising up against the aristocrats. What they did is they found an external enemy, and then everybody forgot about the fact that they weren't earning enough money and they wanted to get a pay raise. And they said, well, let's go to war and, rah, rah, Rome. And that's what the Chinese might do. Who knows if they decide to move on Taiwan but the ancient Chinese strategy, military strategy, has always been to defeat the enemy without firing a shot, without going on the battlefield, weaken the enemy from within. So,
and they're getting good at it.
Shooting war, but I don't put anything past these people, because they know their very survival is at stake. Yeah, and
do we have adequate intel? I mean, are we embedded in there? I mean, I don't know. Am I watching?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, am I watching too many old episodes of Homeland? I mean, where's our intel around what China's talking about or planning to do to us? Or do we have it?
There's a lot of open sources. I wrote a piece recently in American Greatness on their website that draws on a report drawing on public documents publicly available in China, in Chinese. Horizon Advisory Consultancy. Horizon Advisory, you can Google that. You'll find the report. You can read it and download it. And you see where they lay out their strategy, their post-virus plan to defeat America economically. But there's other sources as well. Michael Pillsbury reads Mandarin. He speaks Mandarin. Dr. Michael Pillsbury, author of 100-Year Marathons, got good sources. But beyond that, let me just say this. A friend of mine, retired CIA agent, she was in China. And what happened is the Chinese rolled up a lot of our human assets, and anybody that ever worked with our people in China have all been liquidated. They've all been killed. They've all disappeared. This was a few years ago. They hacked. What they did is the Chinese hacked into the OMB files, the Office of Personnel Management, OPM, other people's money. Now, OPM, Office of Personnel Management, which tracks anyone who's ever gotten a check or a dime or gotten any money from the U.S. government, and they matched that against other information they had, and they were able to identify all the people inside China that had been our assets, and they're all gone. That's what she's told me. They are all gone.
Wow. Interesting background. Curtis, before we, say goodnight to you in a couple of minutes, I wanted to ask you your thoughts and your predictions on how you think, give me a little week by week, maybe month by month maybe predictive strategy? How do you think this thing is going to unfold?
You're talking about which thing is that now?
The pandemic and the effect on our economy and getting back to work, that whole piece.
Yeah. Well, as President Trump said, the cure cannot be worse than the disease. And you don't, you would not want epidemiologists running your country. No. Same reason you wouldn't want economists running your country. Unfortunately, for the last few decades, it seems that we have had economists running the country. They haven't thought about a country. They think about a spreadsheet, what's most efficient. Most efficient to manufacture things in China. It's cheaper. Cheaper is all we care about. Better for the bottom line for the corporation. Corporation doesn't really identify itself as an American corporation. It's a global corporation. We're all global citizens. And that's how we got into this pickle we're in. And it's a mess. But President Trump believes in a nation, believes in America, and we have to do what's right for America, all Americans. And if we just if we burn the village to save the village, that's not going to work. If we destroy our economy and make it...
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. That is a great expression. You can't burn down the village to save the village. That's it. That's
it. You can't do that. We have to have a country life. Look, we're all going to have to be responsible. We're going to have to change the way we live. And particularly people my age and older are going to have to, think twice before we go outside. Maybe we don't have the NBA season and the big games, the big arena stuff, or maybe we do, but we don't let people over a certain age in for a year or so, right? Or for the rest of the season. Maybe that's it. There are ways to do this without shutting down the entire economy. I may still be locked down in New York, but that doesn't mean people in Lincoln, Nebraska have to be. Or people in Fargo, North Dakota have to be, or everybody in Fargo. Maybe the 85-year-olds in Fargo, North Dakota should be told or encouraged, stay in. And remember, the whole purpose of this exercise was not to make sure nobody dies, because guess what, folks? Breaking news here. Everyone's going to die eventually. We don't want them all going to the hospital at once. We want to space this out. So
exactly right.
If you're older and you have diabetes and high blood pressure and root rot and bottom defoliation, and then you get the coronavirus and you go to the hospital, you don't want everybody going at once because there just aren't enough beds. There's not enough money in the world to build enough beds. So we got to slow it down. So that's what this whole thing's about. It's why we wash our hands, wash behind our ears. Don't touch our face, don't touch your face, whatever. And we're going to have to keep doing that. And maybe the older people will telework till we see, for a while, and the younger people can go back out and play, and what they're doing here in New York City is Whole Foods is open 7 a.m. They usually open at 8. They're opening at 7. And from 7 to 8, only senior citizens come in. So we have a bar on the corner where they check your ID to make sure you're over 21. Then we have a supermarket on the other corner where they check to make sure you're over 60 years old. And if you're under 60, you can't get in that hour.
That's really interesting. Yeah, we are going to change the way we live. I'm originally trained as a medical professional, and I've always thought about the hands and touching the eyes and and now the whole world is living like that. It's really kind of an interesting, thing to watch. But I love your take on this thing. You brought me up to almost the end of the show itself, which I love. I hope you'll come back again and again. We love to have you on the show.
It's always fun talking with you, Jane. I love our conversations.
Me too. And I hope you get out of there soon, because I love seeing you in DC as well.
Yeah, so let's see if I can touch my face. There I go.
Me too. There you go. Curtis, stay well, and I'll talk to you soon, my friend.
All right, thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night. Oh my gosh, I love Curtis. He's just such a wonderful guest, and he's so fun, and he's super smart. So you really learn a lot when he's on the show. Gosh, guys, that really, I don't like to say goodnight to Curtis, so I let him, and he's so generous to stay with us. I want to thank you for being on the show tonight. I see a lot of people still on the Periscope, and I thank you so much for staying with us. I have a wonderful show on Wednesday. One of the good things about, I guess, all this extra time and that we're all hunkering down for now, not for much longer, is that I'm putting together more and more guests, and I might add another night while we're in this little bit of a hanging on. So next week I've got Ed Brodow. He's fascinating. You don't want to miss him. And for those of you who are a little bit on the older side, and you remember the hit series Dallas with Larry Hagman, who was J.R. Ewing, a real badass. I have, on this Wednesday, I have one of his co-stars, famous in her own right, Morgan Brittany. She's absolutely beautiful, but I'm not having her on to talk too much about Dallas. I'm having her on to talk about her as the co-founder, and her work as the co-founder of Politichicks, of which yours truly, Dr. Jane, is the newest Politichick. I will be contributing and writing to their website, along with Anne-Marie Murrell, another beautiful soul over there. We'll get Anne-Marie on the show soon, but I'm going to say goodnight because it's almost 9 o'clock. This is Dr. Jane's DC. Stay with the Exceptional Conservative Network because you have the one, the only, the great, the exceptional one, Ken McClinton, coming on at 9 with the Exceptional Conservative Show. See you on Wednesday. Keep your chin up. Things are getting better. Good night, everyone.